Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my 2022 reading survey in which I answer a few questions about my reading for 2022. Now that we're in the new year, I figured now is the perfect time to do it. I didn't want to do it towards the end of the year just because I wasn't sure if I was going to read a few more books towards the end of the year that may have changed some of these answers. So you're getting it in the new year. Basically, this is just a series of questions about my reading. We're going to talk about some things I liked, some things I didn't like, some details. I don't know. There's a lot to go into. I found out about this reading survey through Gabby Reed's channel. I don't know if Gabby's the one who originated this, and I couldn't find in Gabby's description if there was someone who originated this. So I found it through Gabby. I'm leaving it at that. We're gonna get into the questions. So the first question for this challenge is, how many books did you read in 2022 and did you meet your goal? I had a goal of 100 books for 2022 and I read 102. So yes, I did meet my goal. I'm very excited about that. There were a few months in which I was in a major reading slump. I wasn't reading anything. So the fact that I was still able to achieve my 100 books is something I'm very proud of. And it's the first year I've been able to do it. I've had a 100 book reading goal for like 2 or 3 years. So the fact that I finally did it, pretty proud of that. The second question is, what is your most read genre? This may not come as a surprise to most of you. It's going to be romance for this year. I did have a good mystery thriller / horror era. Romance took it, beat out all the other titles. So I'm a romance girly through and through. What can I say? Next up is, what is the longest and shortest book you read? For that, I am consulting my 2022 Goodreads thing. I'll put a little video of it in at the end. But the shortest book I read was Frisky Connections by Michelle Mars. This is about 50 pages. It's a little novella based around Hanukkah and these two characters who meet on a dating app. And the longest book I read was actually one that I read for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and that was Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score at 568 pages. So the next two questions kind of go hand in hand for me because they are, what is your favorite book published in 2022? And then what was your favorite debut book published in 2022? And for those, I'm giving the same answer for both, but I'm going to pick a different one for book published in 2022 just to give you some more options. So my favorite book published in 2022 is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is a small town romance with a big city girl and a small town guy. She gets stranded in this small town and then they meet for the first time and their lives could not be more different. But as they get to know one another, their lives become more integrated and they're grappling with their completely different lifestyles. Then my favorite debut, which is also my favorite book of 2022, is Ophelia After All by Raquel Marie. This follows Ophelia as she grapples with the idea of sexuality and comes into her own and learns more about herself after she learns that she likes one of the girls in her class. This is not a romance. This is very much so a coming of age book and a book about a teenager going through self-discovery. This takes place at the end of her senior year, right before prom and graduation and things like that. So this was my favorite book of 2022 and also a debut book, so I can't wait to read more of Rocky's future releases. Then we have my favorite book that was not published in 2022. I feel like I read a lot of 2022 releases this year, so when I was thinking about like what was my favorite one published, I had a hard time, but I think I'm gonna go with The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This follows a woman who used to go to this little sleepaway camp when she was younger, and when she last went to the sleepaway camp, a couple of her cabin mates disappeared. She was one of the last people to see them alive. She then returns to that sleepaway camp as an adult when it reopens and is trying to solve a bit of the mystery in which she had some part of because she was the last one to see them alive. Then I have a book that lived up to the hype, and that is going to be How to Excavate a Heart. This is a lesbian YA romance in which we follow Shawnee, who is going to DC, and upon arriving in DC, her mom literally hits a girl named May with her car, and after a series of events, Shawnee ends up dog sitting for May's dog, and they get to know one another and eventually fall in love. For a book that did not live up to the hype, I could literally say any Colleen Hoover book that I read this year, but I'm going to go with maybe Reminders of Him. This is one that I went into for the Goodreads Choice Awards, and it had about 500,000 ratings on Goodreads, and it was like fairly highly rated. Like nothing happened. Nothing happened. It was boring. I could put any Colleen Hoover on this list. Also, It Starts With Us didn't live up to the hype, but I would say Reminders of Him was more of a letdown. But I also don't go into Colleen Hoover expecting anything, but with how much people hyped this up, you'd think it'd be decent, and it wasn't. For a book that felt like the biggest accomplishment, you might think the book that was the longest longest, or you might think the book that I went into with expectations that I wouldn't like it and then I loved it or something like that. But instead we're going to pick Twisted Hate, and this is the biggest accomplishment for me because I had to trudge through Twisted Love and Twisted Games in order to read this one, and I hated all three of them. All three of these books by Ana Huang just really missed the mark for me, and the fact that I had to read all three of them for the Goodreads Choice Awards, I feel like I could have just read Twisted Hate, so like my bad on that one. I could have just read this one, but I decided that I wanted to read all three in order to read this one. And yeah, that was my biggest accomplishment because I suffered, and I'm really proud that I got through them and lived to tell the tale. This is a tricky one. This next question is, who is your favorite character? I think I'm gonna have to go with Colton from A Very Merry Bromance by Lisa K. Adams. I have fallen in love with all of the guys on the Bromance Book Club series, and they all are just fantastic. But Colton is a country music star, and he kind of had this like bad boy persona throughout the first few books, but we really got to see his soft side when it came to his relationship with Gretchen in A Very Merry Bromance, and so I just think he's probably one of my favorite characters. It's hard for me to pin this one down because I typically don't think about the characters too much, which is really toxic of me as a reader, but I just don't pay attention to character names a lot of the time, and when I'm reading a book I'll forget the character even if it's one of my favorite books. And of course, to follow that up, we have least favorite character, but this one's actually not too difficult for me. I did have to look up his name, but Alex from Twisted Love. We just went over how much I hated this trilogy. Actually, it's a series. It's 4 books or something like that. I read 3 of them and I will not be continuing, so in my mind it's a trilogy. Alex from this book was like so creepy and so weird, and I'm supposed to be like on board with the hero and the heroine of this romance, right? But like, he was giving me the ick, so I couldn't get behind it. The next question is, what is the most shocking book you read, or what book had the most shocking moment? And obviously I'm gonna pick a mystery or a thriller for this one. I want to say The Last Time I Lied was really shocking for me. This is one that I just mentioned as a book that I loved that wasn't published in 2022. The reveal of this was really surprising to me, and I wasn't expecting it. It was kind of twofold in what was happening, and I expected some parts of it, but the parts I wasn't expecting really took me by surprise. So this one was a delight. Also, House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I was in my Riley Sager era this year, and whereas I didn't like the reveal of this one, and I did not like the ending of The House Across the Lake, I think that it was surprising because I just wasn't expecting that to be the twist. Even though I wasn't a fan of the twist, I feel like you're either gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. I did not like it, but I was surprised and I was shocked to find out what was happening. So like, I can appreciate it in that way. Even though it didn't work for me, it was still shocking, it was still surprising, so that one's gonna fit the bill there. I'm trying to not repeat the same book multiple times, so that's why I'm giving a couple options here, because if I just listed the same 3 books over and over again, what would be the point of the video? I also think I could set my biases of opinions aside in some cases, and so like, for me to say this one was like really shocking, even though I wasn't a fan of it, it still holds up. So I'm trying to kind of create a balance there. So I'm basically not just reciting my favorite and least favorite books. If you do want to see those, I do have videos for each of those if you haven't seen them yet. I'll try and remember to link them down below, but I'm trying to give you some other books here that I haven't really talked about yet. For my favorite couple of the year, I'm gonna pick Nora and Charlie from Book Lovers. This was one that was really challenging for me because there were a lot of couples that I loved, especially considering I was in my romance era this year. But Nora and Charlie were really a couple that I loved seeing them grow together over time. We kind of started as a rivals to lovers romance here. Though they weren't necessarily like enemies or really strong rivals, you could see a little bit of tension between them as they both work in the book world. So it was really interesting to see them kind of come together, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then once they were together, it was a blast. And I liked seeing how their dynamic changed and evolved as their romance did. For the best written book from this year, I want to sit here and say Ophelia After All. I've never tabbed a book as much as I have tabbed Ophelia After All, and I might just still end up saying Ophelia After All because I just loved the writing in this. I have never read a book like this, and it was my favorite for a reason. So like, I'd be lying if I sat here and said like, oh, it was my favorite but I didn't like the writing. Like, obviously the writing was impeccable. The way the characters were conveyed was amazing. and I want to sit here and like give you another one, but this one had my favorite writing and I pulled so many quotes from it that I can't pick another book for this one. So here's Ophelia After All again. Then the book I pushed the most people to read in 2022, I want to say Ophelia After All again, but also I really pushed a lot of people to read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I really loved this romance, and this was a romance that really took me by surprise, and I thought it was charming, and their romance in there was fantastic. And I also pushed a lot of people to read Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. This is a mystery involving a woman who kind of becomes a live-in nanny for this rich family as they go out of town and stuff. So she watches the kids, and a lot of mysterious things end up happening. They can't keep a nanny for a very long period of time, and when she moves into this house, she kind of figures out why, and there's some weird stuff that happens, and the reveal in this was fantastic. So when people were asking for like mystery thriller recommendations, this was the one I was really pointing to. I did not read this in 2022. I believe I actually read it in 2021, but when people are looking for recommendations, I do push this one a bit. So there's two different ones for you there, so I'm not repeating myself again. Next question is one that's a little bit challenging for me to give an answer on. It's what's your favorite book cover of the year? I have a hard time with this one because I am a graphic designer. I'm a book cover snob. And so for me to be like, yeah, this is my favorite cover, like it's really difficult for me. I will say my favorite cover artist slash illustrator is Lainey Kaufman. Anything she illustrates, I will at least try to read. I think her covers are fantastic, and her illustration is one of my favorite styles that I've ever seen. So if Lainey illustrates a cover, I'm probably adding it to my radar shelf. Aside from that, I loved the cover for Survive the Night. I think mystery thriller covers can typically be really well done. This is a thriller following a college student whose roommate is killed by the notorious campus serial killer, and so she's fleeing her college town. She ends up posting on like a need a ride board that she's looking for a ride. She finds someone, and then as they're driving, she's convinced that she is in the car with the campus serial killer because of some things that he's saying or doing. But this cover is just really cool, and I love the typography of it. Another one that I love the typography of that I read this year is His Hideous Heart by Dahlia Adler. This is 13 Edgar Allan Poe reimaginings as well as the original stories. So you have 13 different authors reimagining Edgar Allan Poe stories in some way, and then at the back you also have the original ones. I read this and I would read the retelling and then the original to kind of compare the two, and that was a really fun way to read it. I love some of Edgar Allan Poe's stories, and some of the retellings were really well done. Some of them not so much, but overall this was an anthology that I really quite enjoyed, and the cover of it's really cool too. Then we have what was your favorite book adaptation for this year, and I'm gonna pick Bridgerton. This is a TV show on Netflix. If you haven't seen Bridgerton, like, what are you doing? But I actually watched it for the first time in 2022 when the new season came out. I hadn't read it or seen the show before, and after seeing the first two seasons, I've now read some of the books, and I am obsessed. So that is my favorite adaptation for the year. The next two questions are, what is a book that made you cry the most, and what is a book that made you laugh the most? There's not really one that I have for either of these. I don't think I cried while reading any books this year, and I can't recall what book made me laugh the most, but I wanted to like include those because I'm gonna put all the questions in the description so you're gonna see them there. I just can't think of any. Next up, I have a new favorite author that I discovered this year. I have a few. Obviously, we're gonna have Raquel Marie here. And then I'm gonna also put Riley Sager here. I read Lock Every Door last year and wasn't a fan, but after reading more of his books this year, I can say that I'm intrigued a little bit more and willing to pick up more of his books to kind of give them another try. And also Helena Greer was one that took me by surprise. She wrote Season of Love. I'm not sure if this was this author's debut or not. Their writing was fantastic. The story was great, and I thoroughly enjoyed every second of this. The characters had amazing chemistry. This is a sapphic, Christmassy / Jewish romance about a Jewish family running a Christmas tree farm. We have two characters, Miriam and Noel, who we get to see their romance grow. They're a little bit like rivals / enemies to lovers in this one, but I really enjoyed it and it was really well done. So those are kind of a couple different picks for you there. The last question is one that I don't have, and it's, what is the best nonfiction you read this year? I didn't read any nonfiction, so maybe in 2023 I'll give that a shot, but I didn't read any nonfiction in 2022. I already have plans to read some nonfiction in 2023, some very particular ones, so hopefully I'll have some statistics for that next year, but I don't for 2022. So that's my 2022 reading survey. All of the questions will be listed down below if you would like to take part in this yourself or evaluate your reading as well. Over here, I'm going to put a little scroll through of what my reading year looked like. This is the Goodreads statistics thing that you get at the end of every year that shows your year in reading. So this is mine, and it covers the 102 books that I read this year. All in all, 2022 was a fantastic reading year for me. I found some new favorites, found some new favorite authors, read some amazing books, and I finally met my 100 book reading goal, which I could not be more thrilled with. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I wish you nothing but the best in your year of reading in 2023, and I'll see you all in the next one. Happy reading!